Torah tells us that when Hashem came to give the Torah at Sinai, Asa Mirivavos Kodesh, he came from his myriads of angels, his holy myriads. So Rashi cites Chazal that normally a mortal king, when he comes with all his entourages to show his power, his glory, his pomp, to impress people. Hashem does not impress anyone. He comes Mirivos Kodesh. Mikzas Revovos Malchei Kodesh. Just some of them. Below Kulam, below Rubam. Not all, not even. Hashem does not display who he is. A mortal king has to communicate and show and display who he is. Either because of his ego, or people should know who he is, because otherwise they should be fearful of him. But Hashem does not have to display anything. But factually, he did come at Sinai. He came with his angels, and we find that when we were in the Midbar, we had to travel in camps. There were 4 camps. Each camp was comprised of 3 tribes, and there was a certain formation. Why did we travel in that formation? So the Medrash tells us that at Sinai, when Klal Yisrael saw the angels come with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there were 4 camps of angels surrounding HaKadosh Baruch Hu, 4 camps. So they wanted to be a representation of Hashem's presence on this earth as the angels are in heaven, on the celestial level. It says Misavu, they desired to be that same level of representation as the angels are in heaven. So because they had that desire, they wanted to reflect what the representation on the spiritual level, on the heavenly level. Therefore, Hashem says, when you travel, you will travel in that formation. And what was the center camp? The center camp was Machna Shechina. You had 4 camps encircling Machna Levi. Levi were the officiants and the Kohanim. And the center camp was what? Was the Mishkan, was the Mishkan itself. That was the formation. But that was from the Meirivos Kodesh. When they had seen that, what they were impressed with, not with the numbers, but rather what the level of representation, what the angels represented. We want to be that, the equivalent of that. I'd once mentioned a Rabbeinu Bachya in Parshas Vayigash, where Rabbeinu Bachya speaks about Yaakov. We know, in the words of Chazal, it was considered the Bechir Sheba'obos. He was the most special of the patriarchs. Of the 3, he was the most special. He's the one who fathered the 12 tribes, who are referred to as Shiftei Koch, and he's the father of Klal Yisrael, Yaakov. We find that Yaakov, when he had left to go to his father-in-law in Aram Naharaim to Lavan, he passed over the Temple Mount, and he went to sleep. And he had a dream. He dreamt angels ascending, descending. And what did those angels represent? The future exiles of Klal Yisrael. And the angels which ascended and descended, they represented, the archangels represented the exiles. And as many rungs as they ascended, those were the years of exile. For instance, the archangel of Bovel ascended 70 rungs, because the Babylonian exile was so many years, was 70 years. But the last angel to ascend was the angel of Edom, the Edomite, which were still experiencing that Golos, which is over 2,000 years, who destroyed the second base of Mikdash. That angel ascended and ascended, didn't come down. All the other angels that he saw, they ascended, descended. It was Parasamodai, it was Yovon, the Greek, the archangel of the Greeks. The angel of Edom just kept going up, didn't come down. So the Medrash tells us that Yaakov was terrified. It seems to be, it's forever. Esav Soni Liakov. Esav is the opponent, the antagonist of Yaakov. He just keeps going. Hashem says to Yaakov, if he doesn't come down, I will take him down. He's not going to want to come down. I will take him down. If you remember, we mentioned about Laturim regarding the Daled Lashoni Gula, the 4 expressions of redemption. So the last expression of redemption is lokachti. Lokachti eschem lilom. I will take you as my people. So over there, the Baal HaTurim says that the four expressions of redemption correspond to the four exiles that we're going to experience in the future. Bavel, Mode and Poras, Persian, Medes and the Persians, Yavon, the Greeks, and Edom. What is the last one? So Velokachti corresponds to Edom. That's the last expression of redemption, and I will take them. So over there, the Baal HaTurim cites the measures that even if I have to wrench them out from you, he's not letting go. Edom is not letting go of the Jewish people. Lokachti, even if I have to, Lokachti b'yad chazoka, even if I have to wrench him out from you, I will wrench him out. And that's what Yaakov saw. The angel ascending, he's not coming down. He doesn't want, and as long as he's ascending, that means we're under his dominance. Hashem says, if he doesn't come down, I will take him down. And that's ultimately, that's going to be time of coming Mashiach, when Hashem will take him down. That'll be the end of all evil in existence. That's what Edom is. So there, the Torah tells us, regarding the dream, the angels ascending, descending, it says, Hashem Omer Olov. Hashem stood on top of the ladder. So Rashi says, why did Hashem stand on top of the ladder? To protect him. To protect him from the angels. From these angels, from these forces, Hashem stood there to protect him. So there, the Ramban writes that although we say in Yeshua B'Sei Elyon, that particular chapter in Tehillim, Malochav Yishmorcha B'Koro, Hashem will send angels to protect you from all evil, to protect from evil. Yaakov didn't need any angel to protect him. Because when it says Hashem Omer Olov, Hashem stood on top of the ladder, Yaakov's relation with Hashem was so entwined, so intimate, he doesn't need angels to protect him. Hashem is always with him, and because Hashem is always with him, he needs no angels to protect him. That's the Ramban. And that's the significance of Hashem Omer Olov. Hashem stood on top of the ladder. That's that level of representation. That's Yaakov. We, the 12 tribes, we are a representation of Yaakov. And when we saw that, Yaakov was that. The Shekhinah was with Yaakov. And he didn't even need angels. So there he writes, the Rabbeinu Bachya in Parshas Vayigash, Torah tells us that Yaakov went to Egypt with B'shivin Nefesh, Yordu, Avosenu Mitzrayim. We said in Haggadah. 70 souls went to Egypt with Yaakov. Now, the 70 souls, Yaakov was married to 4 women. That means the 70 were comprised, there were 4 levels of representation, because each one had a different mother, right? You had Rachel, Leah, and you had Bill and Zilpah. They were the mothers of the tribes. And of these 4 women, there were 70 souls besides Yaakov. So Rabbeinu Bachya writes, this is based on Kabbalah. He writes that in Shemayim, in heaven, we have what we call the Kisei HaKavod. The Kisei HaKavod, Kavyocha, means that's where Hashem is. That's the heavenly throne. There are 70 angels which encircle the heavenly throne, and the 70 angels are comprised of four groupings are the equivalent of 70 angels. And they encircle the heavenly throne. So he says, the Rebbeinu Bachya, just as Hashem in heaven, the profile is Hashem and is encircled with 70, and it's made up of 4 camps. Identically, Yaakov on the terrestrial level is a representation of Hashem's presence. He's the center, and who emanates from him? Shivim Nefesh. The Shivim Nefesh emanated from 4 what? They had 4 mothers. So each one had its certain unique characteristics, because each one came from another matriarch, 2 matriarchs and 2 maidservants. That's Rabbeinu Bachya. So he says, from there you see how beloved Yaakov was, that Hashem wanted that Yaakov on the terrestrial level should be a reflection of his profile and his level of representation. That's Rabbeinu Bachya. Take a look in Parshas Vayigash. Ask your question, I'll respond. Ask the question again.
If Hashem and Yaakov were so intertwined, how was Yaakov unable to have a spiritual spiritual growth or ability during the 20-some years that Yosef was gone.
Chazal tell us that because Yaakov was grieving over his son, believing that he was not alive, the Shekhinah only connects when a person is besimcha, in a state of joy, that because he was in a state of depression for 22 years, therefore, the connection was, Hashem was there with him. It was Hashem being there. He was no less beloved, but in terms to be able to, all channels to be open, to have spiritual growth, he did not prophesize. He did not prophesize for 22 years. Because for prophecy, you have to be in the state of joy, and that was lacking because he was grieving. He believed that he forfeited his share in the world to come, because that was the Masorah he had. That if anyone of his children pass away in his lifetime, he's forfeiting his share in the world to come. That was the Masorah that Yaakov had. That's why he was grieving for those 22 years. Okay? That's nothing new. Hashem's presence is there. Are you able to benefit from that presence? In terms of communication-wise, the communication wasn't there. The communications were shut down, but Hashem's association was no less associated even during that period of time. Okay? So, some people study Torah, Shchinim Mayim. Mishnah Perkei Avos. 5 people, Shchinim Mayim. 3 people, Shchinim Mayim. 2 people, Shchinim Mayim. Even 1 person, Shchinim Mayim. So Maral of Prague asks, so if even 1, well, you have to tell me the 10? It's understood. If Shechinah is with 1 person when he studies Torah, so definitely with 2, definitely with 3, definitely with 5, and of course with 10. So what's the mission of fleshing it out here? 10, 5, 3, 2, and 1. So he says, of course, we're talking about different intensity of Shekhinah. It's a different level of presence, whatever that means. So Yaakov had the ultimate. He was the ultimate, Yaakov, because he was the most special of the patriarchs. Okay? That's the understanding. So now, the Rabbeinu B'Yach concludes, so since Yaakov was so beloved to Hashem, he was chosen, his whole profile was a representation of Hashem's presence on the terrestrial level. That's the understanding. That's Rabbeinu B'Yach. So as a result of that, when we saw the myriads of angels at Sinai, and as I mentioned in Medrash, why was our traveling profile 4 camps? The Mishkan was in the center, because when we saw the Shekhinah, Hashem come to Sinai, he was encircled with angels, with these myriads, and they were in 4 camps. Therefore, we wanted to be that level of representation. But that level of representation was in actuality what Yaakov was when he went to Egypt. He was the center, and he had 70 souls, and the 70 souls each one had its own profile because each one came from a different mother. Okay? So now, we read in Zosah Brocha, we say that Ula Zvulun Omar, Zulman, Ula Binyamin Omar, right? Ula Binyamin Omar. Yedid Hashem. Binyamin was the Yedid Hashem, was the beloved of God. Now, who was Binyamin? Binyamin was the younger son of Rachel. He was the younger brother of Yosef. It says, the Gemara tells us that the Holy of Holies, the location of the Aron, was in Chelko Shel Binyamin, was in Binyamin's portion. That's the Holy of Holies. Why? Why was it in Binyamin's portion? So the Pasuk says in this week's Parsha, because it was Chofif Ol Kol Hayom. Chofif Olav Kol Hayom, because he pined for it. He wanted to be the host of the Shekhinah to such a degree, more than all the other brothers. Therefore, he merited that the Shekhinah should be in his location, should be in his portion. That's the Gemara. That's the Bavli. That's the interpretation of the words Chofef Olav Kol Hayom. He pined continuously, waiting for that moment, yearning for that moment that he could host the Shekhinah. And because he yearned for that more than all of them, he merited that the Shekhinah, which is the Kodesh Kadoshim, where the Aron was, should be in his portion. That's the Gemara. You realize Binyamin was one of the 4 people who never sinned. Binyamin never sinned. So it makes sense. Of all the brothers, he was the only one who had never sinned. So if Hashem's going to choose a location where the Shekhinah should be, he should what? It should be in his portion. Of course, he's the purest of all the brothers in terms of sin-wise. Okay, just as an aside. Now, the Yalkut at the end of Zosa Brocha, that's a compilation of Midrashim says differently than the Bavli. Why did Binyamin merit that the Shekhinah should be in his portion, meaning the Aron, the Holy of Holies? Because when Yaakov was old, Binyamin was the youngest son of Yaakov, the 12th son. When he was old, and Yaakov would walk, Binyamin would walk with him, assist him, because it was difficult for him to walk, and he would lean on Binyamin's shoulder for support. And because he leaned on Binyamin's shoulder for support, therefore he merited that he should be the host of the Shekhinah, that he supports the Shekhinah. He's the location of the Shekhinah. That's the Medrash. So with all this background information which I just gave you, and because Yaakov, when he was so old, he couldn't walk himself without this level of assistance, and he leaned on Binyamin's shoulder, so just as Yaakov leaned on him, therefore he merited that he should be, the Shekhinah should lean on him, should be in his portion. But we're explaining with Rabbeinu Bach here, who's Yaakov on the terrestrial level. Yaakov is a representation of the Shekhinah. So Binyamin assisting Yaakov and allowing Yaakov to lean on the shoulder. Who is leaning on Yaakov's shoulder, on Binyamin's shoulder? That's the Shekhinah. Because you had the Shekhinah, which Yaakov is the representation of that. Therefore, as a result of that, you merit that when the Beis Hamikdash will be built, which should be the location of the Shekhinah, you should be the host of the Shekhinah. Therefore, the Aron is in this portion. Just to explain. There's no question. He never sinned. He also had that quality, which the others didn't have. Also remember we said that Yaakov was Eish. The only opposing force to Esav. Esav's Kash. Yosef is Lahava, is the flame. When Yosef was born, Yaakov was ready to leave. Because now he wasn't concerned about Esav any longer. Right? Beis Yaakov is Eish. Beis Yosef is Lahava, and Beis Esav is Kash. The fire can't reach out and consume the straw, but the flame can. Binyamin was also Lahava, because they were Zarshal Rochel. They were the progeny of Rochel. So therefore, Binyamin himself had another representation of what? Of the other brothers. Understand? So really, we're talking about the ones who we leaned on was Yosef and Binyamin. They were the most special. But Binyamin, because he had this additional feature that he would assist his father when he was old, he would lean on the shoulder. Therefore, he was the host of the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah dwells in his portion. We find it says that we say Visham Nisos Shabbos, Lasus Shabbos, Dorsim, Bris Olam, because it's Osi Beini V'Nechem. It's a sign between me and you. It's a sign for who? It's a sign of distinction, that we have a special relationship. Only Jews permitted to observe the Shabbos. It was never given to as we say on Shabbos in the morning, davening, in the morning Amida. Right? Lo Yishnu Areilim. It was only given to Zeri Yaakov, only to the progeny of Yaakov, the Shabbos. Now why? Because what is Shabbos? Shabbos is the Shekhinah. The Gemara tells us in Be'er, every festival, what determines the kedusha of the festival, the sanctity of the festival? Sanhedrin has to. It's dependent on the Kiddush HaChodesh. They have to sanctify the month, right? We say Mekadesh Yisrael Vazmanim. Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh Yisrael Vazmanim. Hashem sanctified Yisrael, and therefore we have the ability to sanctify time. That's every Yom Tiv. What about if it's Shabbos and Yom Tiv? What do we say? Well, let's say just Shabbos. Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbos. Who sanctifies the Shabbos? That's Hashem. We don't sanctify the Shabbos. The Gemara says Shabbos is kavu v'kaimi. Shabbos from the beginning of existence has that same innate holiness even before we came into existence. Because Hashem sanctifies the Shabbos. So how does Hashem sanctify the Shabbos? So it's based on Chazal. What happened on the seventh day? Hashem entered into this existence. And by entering into the existence, the whole existence assumed that special level of Kedusha because of his level of connection to this existence. Only the Jew is a testament that Hashem is the creator of the world. And we have to emulate Hashem, just as Hashem refrained from creative activity on the seventh day. We were chosen to be that testament to the world of who Hashem is. Because Hashem, in action, in essence, dwells in our midst. This is similar to the four tribes, the four camps, where the Machta Shechina was in the middle. The Shabbos, the Shechina dwells in our midst, but on Shabbos, it's on a much more advanced level. Therefore, we are the testament for the same reason. He had an exceptional love, endearment for the Amim. See Rashi who the Amim is. Each tribe was called an Amim. Av choviv Amim. Kol kadoshim b'yodecho. All those who are holy are in your hand. Ve'im tukalu raglecho. And the word tuku could either mean they submitted to be under your feet, or tuku raglecho means they themselves, they sacrifice by wearing their feet, weary, to go study Torah. Yisum edabrasecho, and they carry your commandments. Let's see Rashi. Avchovi v'amim. He had an exceptional love, Hashem, for the Shvatim, for the tribes. Kol echad ve'echad kori am. Every one of the tribes is called an am. Shri Binyamin levado hayosel livolid. Initially, Binyamin wasn't born yet. There were 11 children. Shama Kodesh Baruch Hu liYaakov goyu kal goyim yim im mimeko. He said to Yaakov, yet you can have another goy. Well, kol goyim. What do you mean he's going to have? There's another nation yet to be born from you. I mean, Binyamin's not a nation. So from there we see that each one of the Shvotim, in terms of who they are a representation of Amim, of nations.
Why is that important, though, Rabbi? Here,
What does Hashem create this world? So the giveaway is the first few words of the Torah. Bereshis bara Elokim. The opening statement of the Torah is why God created this existence. For the sake of Bereshis, which is the Torah, that this is the setting for Torah. This is the location of challenge. We're challenged. And if you make the challenge, that is the value and purpose of existence. That mankind should be beneficiaries if they succeed in the challenge. And who is mankind? Mankind is Rashis. Yisrael Sheniku Rashis. Klal Yisrael. So the world ultimately was created for the Torah, but ultimately who should be the beneficiaries? That if they succeed, Klal Yisrael, who are called Rashis. Okay? Therefore, so when we speak about Klal Yisrael being the equivalent of the stars, or like the sand on the beaches, on the seashore, we're not speaking about quantitative numbers. We're talking about qualitative. Innately, each Jew has a certain level of representation, which cannot be quantified. As you're not able to come upon the numbers of the stars in Shemayim, in heaven, you cannot come upon an understanding what the innateness of the Jewish people are, or even one Jew. And as you can't come upon the understanding of the numbers of granules of sand on the seashore, it's something not possible to come upon. Even though in the physical sense, we're We can be computed. We have numbers. But those numbers, what they represent the infinite. That's who we are. We have 70 nations in the world. Why the 70 nations? We're talking about, we're 71. We're the 71st nation. The profile of existence is 7. That's natural. That's the natural order. Anything which have multiples of that number is the natural order. The 70 nations, because what is the setting of that natural order? 70 nations. Klal Yisrael are not part of that 70. We're 71. And our challenge is within that context of those 70 nations, because what they represent is not what we represent. As a result of that, they are the counterforce to what they are. So every one of the tribes, in terms of their progeny, is more than one person, but what they represent is a counterforce to those nations. So therefore, every tribe is the equivalent of a nation. And in conjunction, they counter all those 70 nations. Now, you asked about the Echod. We had mentioned many times the 12 sons to Yaakov, but in fact, the 13 tribes. Correct? Because Yosef was split into 2, Menashe and Ephraim. So there are 13 tribes. What are 13? 13 is Echod. I mentioned this many times, the name of the the Maral of Prague. 13. So even though each tribe has its own unique characteristic, but each one complements the other to create the totality of the whole. That's Echod. And then we mentioned him in Maral, he said, well, not only Echod is very important in number, but even in qualitative standing, each one of us is different. So he explains, of all the 13 tribes, who was the most spiritual of the tribes? Levi. So if you classify Levi, who's Levi? Levi would be Aleph. He's the first. And now you had the children of the matriarchs, Rachel and Leah, and you had the children of the concubines, the maidservants. How many children were the children of Rachel and Leah? 8. Leah had 6. Rachel had 2. That's 8. So you have Aleph, Ches. How many children were born to the maidservants? Each one had 2. That's 4. So not only are we Echod in number, even the profile is Aleph, Ches, Dalet. That's the Maral of Prague. So who is the Echod? The one. The one is Klal Yisrael. We are Echod. And we are that force which counters whatever that 70 is. And that's the purpose of the 70. The purpose of the nature of the natural world is Klal Yisrael. We are what we call the center of the universe. Everything revolves around us, how we behave. The world either ascends or descends based on our behavior. One thing, find when Levi was born, who named Levi? So if you take a look over there, Rashi cites the Medrash, Rashi brings this, that Gabriel had taken Levi, his neshama, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Hashem named him Levi. Levi, from time of his conception and his whole period of gestation in his mother's womb, Levi was special from that time onward. Levi was the only tribe that wasn't involved in the Chet Egel. Levi was the tribe that didn't agree to be part of the bondage. The Jews initially had a choice to be part of the bondage, not part. Amram, being the leader of the Klal Yisrael, the only tribe that listened to him, that he said, you should not enter into that conscription to show them your ability. The only ones who listened was Levi. The other tribes didn't listen. And that's why Levi was not influenced by the bondage. Levi never became idolaters in Egypt. All the other Jews became idolaters. And that's why Levi ultimately at Sinai, when this Egel came about, Levi did not participate. Because they didn't have that background, they didn't have that Achilles heel of idolatry in their DNA. The rest of the Klal Yisrael had it in them because of what they experienced in Egypt. That's why Levi is the Aleph. So again, even though the founding father Binyamin, but that doesn't make a difference. Everything's dependent on how things manifested themselves. Binyamin's progeny did not hold out the way Levi's did. Not only that, there's a Rabbeinu Bachya always mentioned, the Sipuno, why did Levi's children not become idolaters? Phenomenal Rabbeinu Sipuno. Who was the last son of Yaakov to pass away? Levi was the last son to die. As a result of that, because they had a grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great, taking care of them, and he was the role model, therefore his children did not go off the skids. They did not become idolaters. Because Levi was there to take care of his children and all his descendants. The other ones, they passed away earlier. Therefore, they were subject to those influences, and therefore they were compromised regarding idolatry. That's the Sipuno.
Rabbi, wasn't Moshe's grandchildren idolaters?
1 second. Good ball. Okay, go to answer the question, Alan.
So the question is, about 3,000 years ago, when the Sancherev and the tribes were
Exiled. There were 10 tribes were
exiled, and we don't know who's what. We really now
we're comprised of 3 tribes.
3 tribes right now.
Yamin, Yehuda, and Levi.
And Levi, correct. So now we only have 3 tribes, and if it was already constructed that the tribes were to counteract the 70 nations, how are we subsisting? And the 3 tribes that we have right now, are they really 100%, or are they really 25%?
Okay. Now, there's a beautiful medrash that one of the, I think it was Rishua Hanani, who was one of the Tanoim, who had a special relationship with one of the Roman emperors. And the Roman emperor says to Rishua Hanani, there's a medrash on Chuma, we were very benevolent, and we're very giving, and we're very kind and very merciful. Why? Because you people, you're a goat, you're a sheep amongst 70 wolves. How could a sheep survive when you're surrounded with 70 wolves? Right? It must be because we're so kind and giving and benevolent. That's why. That's what the Roman emperor is telling Reb Shua ben Chananya. Reb Shua ben Chananya says, no. You know why we were able to survive? Although we're surrounded by 70 wolves that want to devour us? Because we got a special shepherd. We got a tough shepherd, and he watches over us. That's the reason why we're able to survive. That was his response. Meaning, based on the Pasuk Tehillim, the Gemara tells us in 2 locations, without Hashem's intervention, which we call Siyata Dishmaya, we cannot outpace, to any degree, the evil inclination. He could run rings around us that you can't imagine. Our choices are only Siyata Dishmaya, this continuous divine intervention. That we exist. Every generation, they want to consume us. They want to eat us alive. Why can't they? Hashem saves us. There's always intervention. Just as there's intervention on the physical level, there's always intervention on the spiritual level. That we're able to come upon certain understandings and address what our spirituality needs to bring about that level of what we call shleimus, spiritual completion. Hashem provides that. That since He promised us that the Jewish people are an eternal people, we're forever, and the Torah will never be forgotten from us, which is something which is miraculous, despite everything. It's only because that spiritual continuous intervention. So we represent 25%, but even though we're 25% or less, but nevertheless, functional-wise, achievement-wise, we achieve what we're supposed to achieve. He provides enough assistance that we're able to achieve what we're supposed to achieve. I'll give you an example. We're talking about now the war in the Middle East. Yimach Shemam, the Arabs. Israel is, we're talking about they're a speck on the scene, on the world scene. And they're taking on the whole world, fighting-wise, in physical sense. We're talking about the Arabs, they just keep coming. As much as you kill them, they just come out like vermin out of the sewers. They just keep coming. And as much as you kill them, they're not deterred. They don't go away. But how? How do you survive it? And we see miracles continuously. Continuously. There was a miracle just 2 days ago. that base that was hit with the drone, where 4 soldiers were killed, 7 injured seriously, and 60 injured. Do you know what happened during that? There were a group of men there, soldiers. One says it was a dining hall, and they said, and they ate 4 shifts because of concern for safety wise. So that's why there were less casualties. But there was a group said, we're going to say Birchas Hamazon with a zimun, So all the people that are going to bench with a zimun, they went out to wash Mayim Achronim. When they went out to wash Mayim Achronim, that's when the drone hit. And because they went to wash Mayim Achronim, that's the reason why they weren't killed or injured. I mean, they're continuous stories without a stop. This continuous divine intervention, why things could be disastrous and they're not disastrous.